Ashley Bugge. Welcome back to the show.
Woohoo!
I am excited to talk to you. You live a great big life of adventure. You are a widowed single mom. We will remind our audience a bit about your story before we get started, but welcome to the show, and thanks for carving out some time. I gave you a little rest time after your expedition before I invited you to the show, and here you are. So thanks for being here.
No, thank you. I promise it's not been a restful few weeks anyways, but I do appreciate that. I'm so excited to be back, and how cool to get to share like the next part of my story with you and your viewers.
Well, last we talked, we just kind of said it at the end that you were chosen, you were selected to go on this expedition. But let's first talk about, just remind our audience who you are. I met your mom in an airport in Austin, and she and I hit it off, and her name is Lisa as well. And she was telling me about you because somehow the fact that I'm a widow and her daughter's a widow came up in the conversation. And then I reached out to you, and you and I have become fast friends. So tell us a bit about that part of your story, and then we'll get into the expedition conversation.
Yeah, so very similar to you. I'm a widowed mom. I have 3 kids. My husband passed away in a scuba diving accident in 2018 when we were stationed in Hawaii. I was 6 months pregnant with our youngest, and my other kids were 1 and 3 at the time. So we are approaching the 5-year mark at this point, this May. And it's been a tumultuous 5 years. But through all of that, there's definitely been a lot of growing, a lot of opportunity, a lot of recalibrating, and figuring out how to do life now as a widowed mom of 3. And that, that first, as I'm sure you experienced, that first couple years are just miserable. And I had a newborn baby in the mix. And it was just hard. In a word, hard, excruciating, awful, terrible. But yeah, I've learned how to live with it. I've really embraced this idea that you don't get over grief, you don't get through it, you just learn how to live with it and how to work with it. And I fought that for a long time. Honestly, probably just this last year, I've kind of been like, all right, I guess we're doing it. I guess I can't fight this anymore. I need to figure this out.
And that part of it is part of the process too, is the acceptance.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. For me, and I know it's true of you and the work you do, and you choosing to write about it and share about it, and then choosing your life of adventure, which we'll talk about as well. For me, I couldn't imagine a life without Wesley, my late husband. So I built him into my life now, and it's a lot of the work I do. It took me a long time to learn to write and speak his name in the past tense. But I know that I am a stronger, more capable person for trusting the grief process and ending up where I am now, almost 19 years later.
Yeah. And I don't know that I trust the grief process yet. I'm not there yet, but I am trusting myself to figure it out. And I guess that's a big part of it too. But
grief looks different for everyone. It looks different for everyone. But if you had told me the day after, or the week after, or the year after, or even 4 years after, 5 years after, as you're coming upon that I could learn to live a life without him and find joy in all of the things. I mean, it probably took me that first year or two also. And to tell me that I would survive this planet 19 years without him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed it myself. Of course, I would have lived and survived, but to really live is really the goal, to really live and embrace life, which you are doing. You are doing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's talk about this expedition of yours. We barely touched on it as we were ending having you on the show last year. And I want to let everyone know kind of what that selection process is. Let's talk also about how, you had a decision to make just in terms of whether or not you would dive again because of the fear that surrounded it. You being a widowed single mom, we make decisions a little differently, I think, than probably a divorced parent or someone who has both parents for their children, because now we're responsible. We don't want to orphan them. But at the same time, it comes back to wanting to still live a life. And for you, it was a last minute kind of decision to go to the memorial of your husband's death and dive with the people who were honoring him that day. It wasn't
Yeah.
planned all along that you would go. You decided kind of last minute to do it.
Yeah, like literally 2 days, actually the day before we flew out. So, scuba diving had always been a part of, not always, we learned to dive together. And when we learned to dive, that became a part of our marriage. Like it became a part of us intrinsically as individuals, and then us as a couple as well. And then for him to die in a diving accident, yeah, I was shaken. It's like I will not dive again. Like the only way for me to not die in a diving accident is to never scuba dive again.
Mhm.
But same as any other thing that is just a part of you, it doesn't matter what it is, you stop doing it and you just feel like something is missing from you, like you're not whole.
You already
And
lost
so,
him, and then
yeah,
you would lose this big part of your life that even though you did it together, maybe you could do
yeah,
that by yourself.
exactly. And so, yeah, I assembled his dive team to all fly back to Hawaii, and I had his ashes turned into a living reef memorial. Excuse me. And the plan was to lower the living reef memorial into the ocean where he died, and for his dive team to place it there so that people would have a place to go back and visit him. And 2 days before, kind of my way of thinking was, this is literally the only opportunity I will ever get to have this moment.
Mm-hmm.
This will never come again. There will never be a time where I can be there to say a proper goodbye in the safest environment possible, because all eyes would be on me. There's no
Right.
way his dive team would let
Yeah,
anything happen to me.
exactly.
And so it just became like, I have to do this. Like I can't not do this. The risk of regretting my decision in not doing this is so much greater than the risk of something happening to me on this specific dive. And so then I called the dive team and I said, hey, I'm going to do the dive. And I understand this adds an increased element
Mm-hmm.
of a lot of emotion here, but I can't not do this for Brian. If the roles were reversed, he would be there for me. And I want to do this for him and for me and for my kids watching from the boat above. And so, yeah, I made the decision and I flew to Hawaii, and that was my first dive back in a year since he had passed away, actually longer because I was pregnant when he passed away. And so I did the dive, and it filled that hole. It was like, oh, I can do this. It just boosted my confidence in so many ways of not only am I conquering fears, not only am I saying goodbye to Brian, which I've held on to for so long, like if I didn't dive, then maybe he didn't really die. You make these things in your head. And yeah, I did the dive, and I haven't stopped.
We just got a call to get geared up because there's humpback and orcas out here. It's really hot and very sweaty in this. But thankfully, I have an awesome roommate who helped me get my shoes on. We're gonna go find some whales.
Yeah.
Well, and that really leads us to the next part of our discussion, because if you hadn't gone through that process, you would not at all have been prepared for the opportunities coming your way.
No.
So let's talk about that. So you decided to start diving, and when you, in doing that, you invite other things into your life now.
Yeah.
I'm going to start over. You invited diving back into your life, and that invited other opportunities. So let's talk about this expedition that you were just on. I can't even imagine going there on land, let alone going there by sea. So first of all, let's talk about the expedition itself and how you were selected.
Yeah. So it's kind of a big, I don't know, conglomeration of events that happened. So I did the memorial dive. In conjunction with the memorial dive, I was writing a book called Always Coming Back Home, which was the story of Brian and I. It included diving. It included leading up to his death. Once I started the book, I was contacted about possibly making a documentary about his death, a human factors a subject matter expert in the UK, saw some of the stuff I was publishing about Brian's death, reached out and said, would you ever be willing to make a documentary about this? And so I worked with him and Brian's dive team, and a filmmaker from the Netherlands. And we met back in Hawaii and we made this documentary called If Only. The expedition leader named Susan Eaton saw this documentary and was like, who is this woman? Like, this is insane. She's releasing this information. This is unheard of. A lot of families of people who die in accidents like that keep it guarded. They keep it close. And I did the opposite. I wanted people to know what happened. I want to help prevent additional scuba diving deaths. And so I wanted this information to get as far reaching as possible, which happened with this documentary. So being in the expedition field and diving field and water research field, she came across this documentary. She looked me up, she found my book, and she reached out to me and said, basically that, who are you? Like, what do you do? Tell me more. And I'm, my daughter's probably 6 months old at the time. And no, she's a year old at the time. And I said, well, I'm just changed a diaper and now I have to go make dinner for my, 4 and 5 year old, 3 and 5 year old.
Right.
And
right.
yeah. And so we had a long conversation and she's like, well, I run this all female expedition team. We travel to remote places of the world to do research on climate change and how it's affecting typically whales and other sea mammals. Normally people apply for this and there's an application process, but I need you on this team. I want you to be on this team. And I said, okay.
So this was a couple of years ago that she even mentioned it.
Yeah.
So how long is this expedition planned? How often does it happen? So was there an expedition coming up in between the time of the one you took and when you started talking to her?
Yes.
And it was just that you weren't ready to do it until?
Oh, I was ready. COVID was not ready for us.
Okay. So that was the delay. Okay.
Yeah. We were slated to be in the Arctic in the fall, winter of 2020. And then COVID happened and it got moved to 2021. And then COVID still was going on. Norway was shut down to visitors. And so we had to push it to this year. So we have been planning for almost 3 years for this one expedition at this point.
And you went in 2022, right?
Sorry, yeah, 2022.
Yeah. Okay.
But we didn't get the go ahead until like August of 2022, where they said, okay, Norway's open, you guys can come.
So then let's talk about what the actual expedition looked like. I know the goal, you shared the goal.
Yeah.
So how long was it? Where exactly did you go? How many people were there? How do you even prepare for such a thing? Let's start with where you were going and how long you'd be there. What was the expectation of you?
Sure. So we are a team of 34 women from around the world. We represent 15 countries of the world. So really just this incredible cast of characters. There's marine biologists, there's marine scientists, there's award-winning photographers and videographers, there's storytellers. I was the master scuba diver. So really just an assembly of the people at the peak of what they do. So my position and my role on the team, I was brought on as the Ocean Storyteller and master scuba diver. We were going to be in Arctic Norway, so 217 miles north of the Arctic Circle. So we all met in Tromsø, Norway, which is like the northernmost city of the world. And from there, we did a 3-day leadership conference with my cohorts. There's 34 women. We're broken into teams of 12, basically. There's 3 different teams. So my first team of 12, we met in Tromsø, had a 3-day leadership conference, and then headed down to the research vessel and spent the next week on the research vessel.
And was there any part of it that you've seen some beautiful places underwater?
Yeah. Yes.
Was there any part of any of your experience that prepared you for such an adventure?
No. I have traveled the world. I've been to 30-something countries. I have dived in many, many places around the world. There is not a single experience that I can compare this to of being 6 feet away from a 60-foot long humpback whale and her calf. There is nothing that prepares you for getting in the water, and there's 9 orca just right in front of you. The sounds, the sights, the ice cold water, the team environment, just all women out here on this grand adventure in the name of science and the name of education. No, there's nothing that I've done. I've done some cool stuff, but there is nothing that compares to that.
So the age range of your children, tell me the age range again.
Right now they're 4, 6, and 8.
So how do you even tell them what you've done or what you're doing? And I'm guessing you are writing, or you're coming up with some way of archiving this adventure for yourself as well.
Yeah. So my kids have been to Norway. I took them to Norway a couple of years ago. So I told them I was going to Norway. So the older ones at least have an idea of what Norway looks and feels like. But when I try to explain, I'm living on a research vessel, I'm getting in a Zodiac, and we're driving around the ocean all day looking for whales. I'm getting in the water. They've seen me scuba dive, so they understand bits and pieces of this. But yeah, the idea of expedition, the idea of living at sea on a research vessel, the idea of women coming from around the world that have been planning for 3 years. There's no even
the
explain
idea
this
that
to
you were chosen out of those 30
Yeah.
plus, of those 30 plus women, you were one of the ones chosen, invited.
Yeah.
It's always nice to be invited to the party, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm back now. I've done the expedition, but I still have imposter syndrome. I'm still like, wait, what? I'm a polar explorer? Like, that's not real. Like, I was there, but I'm not really that person. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing to wrap your head around, which I'm sure a lot of people go through.
And what is the message you think sends to people who are in the depths, literally, of hell on earth, in grief, in trauma, to do the thing you're afraid of doing, because then who knows what else can come from it?
I mean, I want to say just push yourself. Just put yourself outside your comfort zone and just go for it. But I understand, having been there, that it's not as easy as that. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of I have mom guilt. I had to leave my kids for 3 weeks to go do this. I had to pull in favors from friends to stay with my kids on school nights. There's a lot that goes into some of these things, but the first thing is just conquering the idea that you can do more. You can smile again. You can enjoy life. But I understand that it takes a lot of grit to get there, and a lot of putting yourself out there and being very uncomfortable and very vulnerable, but recognizing, like, life is so short. People who have lost someone understand tomorrow's not guaranteed. And so this might be your only chance to do this. This might be my only chance to go on a polar expedition in the Arctic, like, I don't know if this is going to come around again. I hope it is. I have plans for it too, but you just don't know. And so really just taking advantage of any opportunity that comes up and not making excuses.
I think too, when we are, there's this quote that something about, I'll get it wrong, but it's close to it, about how hopefully when I get to the end of my life, God will say you used all your gifts, and that I think about that, and how, what if Wesley were here, what he would think of the work I'm trying to do. And I think about Brian, and what would he think of the work you've continued to do? Because some of this work that we do is only happening because they're not here.
Yeah.
Which is also something difficult to kind of come to terms with.
Yeah.
But if we learn to embrace whatever opportunities come from this new wholeness that we've discovered, little bits at a time, then that's the life we're meant to live. We're still here.
Yeah. I say often, like, you can't change the past. You can't change what's happened, but you can use it to propel you forward. And so I have that same feeling of, Brian would just be so excited and so pumped and so jealous of all these adventures that I'm going on, and, taking my kids on. And I just, he's gone, but I still feel him like cheering us on and being like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, what? You're going on expedition. Oh my God, you're going to be diving with orcas and humpbacks. Like, I hear his voice in my head being excited because I know these are things he would love to do, that he would love for me and the kids to do. And it is only possible because he's not here, that his dying changed the entire trajectory of my life and my future. But it doesn't mean that it had to be in a bad way.
And I'm waiting for the day I know you got and I'm
So what kind of message, we just have literally just a minute or two left. What kind of lessons and message are you trying to send your kids in the everydayness and in the, the mundane things we do every day as a parent, and also in these great grand adventures? They must be learning so much from the possibilities, even if the younger ones don't quite get it yet.
Yeah, I just try to include them in literally everything I do. So I talk to them about what it is that I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. And I want their childhood of travel and adventure, I want this to be their baseline, so that as they grow and as they eventually move out and go on their own lives, this was their childhood. Their mom being a polar explorer was like, whatever. Like, my mom's just a polar explorer. She's
No
just
big
an
deal.
award-winning author. She's just a
Yeah.
documentary filmmaker. Like, I want that to be boring to them, because that means like their next
The bar
step
is
to
high
really-
for them.
Yeah,
The bar
I
is high.
want that. In fact, I'm in March. I got invited on another expedition, this time to Honduras, to do some whale shark research. And I begged them, like, is there any way I could bring my 8-year-old with me? She can't dive yet; she's too young, but she could snorkel and she could work on some of the coral reef restoration. I promise, she's an ocean baby. Like, she's very well behaved. I like sold it, and they were like, absolutely.
Oh,
If we can
yay.
get kids involved in this stuff, 100%. So my daughter at 8 years
Will you come
old,
back and maybe bring her on the show after that?
yes, that'd be awesome.
I'd
Now,
love
the
that.
first thing she said when I told her, she's like, well, Mom, can I do a presentation to my school about it? I was like, yes, 100%. So yeah, 8 years old, she'll be going on her first scientific expedition in Honduras. And I just think, imagine me getting to do that at 8 and how that would change the course of my
Right.
life. And I get to do this for my kids. And I think it's really cool.
I think it's really cool too. Cool mom club for sure you are. Well, thank you for being here. We'll keep up with your adventures as you share them with us. And
Yeah.
you and I will see each other when the snow melts.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Take good care, Ashley.